Welcome everyone. In this video we're covering the path tool. Now the path tool is the equivalent of the line or polyline tool in other applications. You can access it either from the toolbar at the top of Google Earth or by going under the add menu and then choosing path. The command for that is Ctrl-Shift-T. Alternatively, you can also access the path tool from within the ruler tool, but we're going to cover that in just a moment. Now let's say that we want to use the path tool to trace this road that we have in the middle of the viewport. I'm going to go under the quick access menu and click on the path icon. This window is going to appear. Now make sure not to close this window because only while it is open you will be able to use the path tool. Now you can specify a name. Let's say that we call this road, and you can also add a description if you want, but in this case I'm going to leave this blank. I'm going to move the window a little bit to the side. And now in the viewport, I'm going to left click once to make the first point of our line, and then left click again to make another point. If I want to reposition a point, I can simply left click on it and then hold and drag to place it to a new location. If I want to remove a point, I can left click on it first to select it. It's going to be highlighted in blue, and then I can either press the right mouse button to delete it, or alternatively, I can press the delete button on the keyboard. Now, if I want to make many points in succession without having to click every time, let's say that I want to trace out some curves, then I can just left click, hold and drag with my mouse, and this is going to allow me to create many points automatically following my cursor. Now, if you want to delete many points quickly without having to select each one and then delete them individually, you can select the last point from which you want to start deleting back, and then simply hold the delete button on your keyboard, and this is going to start deleting all of these points in succession. If you delete all of your points, then this message is going to appear and will say simply that there are no more points to delete. You can press OK on that. And now you can start drawing the path again. So it may be a little bit frustrating sometimes when you're using the path tool or the polygon tool, where you inadvertently hold the left mouse button and you make a lot of points. Simply hold the delete button on your keyboard to delete all of those quickly until you go back to the very last point that you wanted to make. Now I'm going to keep left clicking with my mouse button to trace out this road. And now when I'm done tracing, I can go under the style and color tab because I want to assign a different style to this line. I'm going to click on the color tab and this will open up the color picker. Let's say that I want to choose something like red. I'll click on red and then press OK. And then I want to increase the width to, let's say, 10 units, just to make the path wider. Now I can grab the points again and reposition them if I need to. Now, if you don't see the points, this is because they're also red, so you may want to decrease the opacity, which is the transparency of the line. I'm going to set this to 50, and this is going to make it easier to see all of the points that make up the path. So now I can reposition them. Now another thing you can do with paths is to use them as a sort of a ruler. So if you go under the measurements tab, you will see the total length of your path. This is currently set to kilometers, but if we expand the drop-down menu, we can set this to be in other units. Let's say we want to see meters. So if we wanted to have a path of, let's say, 1,200 meters, I just have to grab one of the points and reposition them until I get that length. You can also embed paths with an elevation value. If we go under the altitude tab, we will see here an altitude field. At the moment, this is grayed out because the mode is set to clamp to the ground, meaning that our path is going to stick to the terrain regardless of whether the 3D terrain in Google Earth is turned on or off. At the moment it is off, but if I set this to, let's say, relative to ground, which is probably the most common mode that I use next to clamp to ground, we will be able to assign an altitude value here. And because this is set to relative to ground, then our path is going to always stay at this altitude relative to the terrain, regardless of whether the 3D terrain is turned on or off. So let's say that I want to set a value of 50 meters here. Then I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to use the middle mouse button to move to perspective mode. And we can see that our path is now sitting 50 meters above the terrain. Now I'm going to enable the 3D terrain. And if this happens and you just see empty space, you can just double click on the path under the list of places and your viewport is going to switch back to it. Alternatively, you can just hold the right mouse button and drag to zoom out from the viewport, and then simply reposition back to where you were. Now I'm going to right-click on the path and then go back to Properties. Under the Altitude tab, we have this option called Extend Path to Ground. If I click on that, an extension line is going to be made from each point that we have on our path down until it reaches the terrain. This could be very useful for visualization purposes. For example, if you want to visualize electric power lines or even fence posts. If you want to fill up the space in between each of these points in 3D space, you can go under the Style and Color tab. And then under the Area section, at the moment this is set to Outlined, and this is what actually creates these extension lines from every point down to the terrain. If we set this to Filled plus Outlined, we can see that now the empty space in between the segments has been filled. And if we set this to just Filled, then the extension lines are going to disappear, and instead we're just going to have this box filling in all of that space. We can reduce the transparency of this filled polygon just by going back under the Properties of the path, and then under the Style and Color tab, under the Area section, we have the opacity values here. I'm going to set this down to something like 50%. Now, paths and polygons are a little bit different compared to place marks when it comes to the Extend Path to Ground setting. With place marks, when you enable these settings, you can accurately position a place mark in space even when you are in the perspective mode and when the 3D terrain is turned on. But paths and polygons kind of have this capability already built in. So even if I uncheck the Extend Path to Ground setting, we can see that the points that make up the path are still sticking through the terrain, and they're very visible. So if I want to reposition this path accurately, even while I'm in perspective mode, I can simply grab the point and correlate it to the satellite photo. So I don't necessarily have to be in the orthogonal top-down view to do this. Whereas with place marks, I would have to either enable the Extend Path to Ground setting in order to see the extension line that will allow me to position the point accurately, or I would have to do this in top-down mode. Now, one really cool thing that you can do with paths is you can create elevation profiles. So let's say that we want to get an elevation profile of these hills that we have to the side here. All I have to do is to create a path that would cross that area at the alignment that I want to get a cut section from. So I can either use the existing paths and I can either use this existing path that I already created and simply reposition it, or I can create a brand new path. And then let's say that the alignment that we want to get a profile from extends from this point up to this point. And now with this path selected, I can go under the Edit menu and then click on the Show Elevation Profile. The elevation profile is going to appear at the bottom of Google Earth. If you want to scale this up or down, you can position your cursor in between the viewport and the elevation profile and simply drag this up or down. This elevation profile will contain some basic information such as the elevation gain or loss, the maximum slope, and the average slope. If you want to isolate that information just for a certain extent of the path, if you want to call out this kind of information just for a certain extent of the path, you can position your cursor somewhere on the elevation profile where you want to start, then left click, hold and drag out to isolate an area. And now the information that is being displayed here is only going to apply to this area. If you want to reset the elevation profile, then simply left click somewhere on it. Notice that as I move my cursor along the elevation profile, the corresponding position is going to be indicated on the path in the viewport with a red arrow. To close out of the elevation profile, just click on the crosshair button in the top right corner of it. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, one of the ways by which you can access the path tool is directly through the ruler tool. Now, the ruler tool is found again on the quick access menu, just in the middle of it. You can also go under the tools menu and click on ruler there. This window is going to appear. You can access the path tool either from within the line toolbar or the path toolbar. The difference between the two is that the line tool can only allow you to make a path that has only 2 points, whereas the path2 is like a polyline in that it can contain more than 2 points. So normally I'm going to use the path2. You can also enable it to show the elevation profile automatically. So if we tick the show elevation profile box and we draw out a path, so if we toggle on the show elevation profile box, the elevation profile will be enabled automatically as we draw the path. Now to make the path, I'm just going to left click once and then make a few more points. And now if I want to convert this line to a path, I can click on the save button. And now we can edit this as we would normally do with any path. And now the last thing to cover is that just like with any other object inside of Google Earth, we can attach information to paths. This can either be text information under the description box, a link or a web image, or a local image. So if you want to add a direct link to the description of this path, you can click on the add link button and then paste your link here. Similarly, if you want to attach an image from the web, you can click on the add web image button and paste a direct link to the image. Normally, I would attach a local image to Google Earth objects. Normally, I would attach images to Google Earth objects from my hard drive. So for this, I would use the add local image option. I'm going to click on that. And now I can navigate to my desktop and select the images that I want to attach. You can attach more than one image, and you can also select multiple images at the same time if you want to attach them as a batch. So in this case, I have 3 images that I want to attach. I will select the first one, hold the shift button and select the last one. This will effectively select all of them, and then I can click on open. And all of them will be attached now to this path. So I can just click on OK. Now, if I want to preview them, I can either select the path directly in the viewport, or I can select it from within the list of places. So I'm going to click on it there, and we can see now all of the images that I attached have been listed here. If I want to expand any of these images so that I can see them more close up, then I can right click on any of them and choose to open the image. This is going to display the image in the viewport. With the left mouse button, I can zoom into it, and with the middle mouse button, I can pan around. Now, if you want to exit out of this view and go back to the Google Earth viewport, you can click on the Back to Google Earth button in the top left corner. Now, if you want to save out this path so that you can share it with somebody else, including any information that you have attached to it, such as descriptions or images, you can right-click on it, either under the list of places or directly in the viewport, and then go under Save Place As. Then you can navigate to a location on your hard drive where you want to save it out to, and you can give it a file name, and then you can choose one of 2 file formats, either KMZ or KML. If the path has any images attached to it, then you should save it out as a KMZ, because KML will not be able to contain the images within the file itself. They will be exported out with the path, but separately. And you would have to then send out both the KML and any images together if you want whoever is receiving the KML to also be able to see the images. Otherwise, if you send out just the KML, then the images are not going to be included, so the person will not be able to see them. But if you save it out as a KMZ, then any images are going to be retained within that KMZ file. So it is a much more convenient way of sending out data that contains images. Otherwise, if you're just saving out simple vectors that you intend to send to someone else, and those vectors do not have any images attached to them, you can save those out as a KML. In this case, since I have images attached to the path, I'm going to save it out as a KMZ and click on Save. Now I can delete these paths from within the list of places. I'm going to select both of them just by holding the Control button and clicking on both of them. And then I'll right click and choose Delete. And I'm going to press Yes on that. And now if I want to import the path back again from where I saved it out from, I can just select the KMZ file and drag and drop it in the Google Earth viewport. If I want to access the images and data that I stored under this path, I can just left click on it, either in the viewport or under the list of places. And so this covers it for paths for now. I hope that this video has given you some information on how you can use paths in your own workflow. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next sessions.